Is the pointer visible, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all of you tell me which part of God tube is this?
Foregut.
Foregut. This is which part of God tube?
Midgut.
And this is which part of God tube?
Hindgut.
Okay. Now we'll continue the derivatives of the God tube today. Okay. Now foregut. Foregut give rise to several part of the GIT as well as the part of the respiratory system also. Okay. And the foregut is supplied by the artery, the branches from celiac trunk. The celiac trunk is also known as the artery of foregut because it supplies the branches derivatives of foregut, except the pharynx and the respiratory tract and most of the esophagus. Though they are derived from the foregut, they are not supplied by the celiac trunk. They are supplied by other branches, other arteries. Now the derivatives of foregut are primordial pharynx, okay, pharynx and their derivatives and their parts, and the lower respiratory system, not upper respiratory, lower respiratory system, that is trachea, bronchi, lungs, then esophagus and stomach, then duodenum up to the opening of the bile duct, and extrahepatic biliary apparatus, that is including the hepatic duct, gallbladder, bile duct, liver also, liver and extrahepatic biliary apparatus, and the one of the endocrine gland as well as exocrine gland. This is the pancreas. So these all are the derivative of foregut. Why I am giving you this gist in the beginning is, in the Viva, most of the time the question is or in the embryology model, the most of the time the question is enumerate the derivatives of foregut and give the name of the artery which supplies the derivative of the foregut. The derivatives of the foregut are, what are the derivative? What are the derivative? Which part of GIT? What are the derivative of foregut? Please unmute your mic and answer the question, please. What are the derivative of foregut?
Primordial pharynx and its
Pharynx,
derivatives.
yes. And
Lower respiratory system.
lower respiratory system means
Esophagus.
is there does it include the nasal cavity, larynx?
No, ma'am.
No.
Bronchi.
Trachea, bronchi, larynx, lung, yes. And in the GIT,
Yes.
esophagus, stomach, and up to which part of duodenum?
Up till the opening of bile duct in
That
the
means
duodenum.
up to the second part of duodenum. Then
liver,
yes,
liver, hepatic ducts, gallbladder, pancreas, bile duct.
yes. These all are hepatic duct, gallbladder, bile duct are the part of extrahepatic biliary apparatus. What is the artery which supplies the derivative of foregut?
Celiac trunk.
Yes, it supplies the derivative of foregut except those part which has also the derivative of foregut, but they are not supplied by the branches of celiac trunk. What are they?
Pharynx, lower respiratory tract, and esophagus.
Esophagus.
Most
part of esophagus means cervical part, thoracic part, except the abdominal part. Okay. Now,
yes,
the another part of the gut tube is the midgut. The artery of the midgut is superior mesenteric artery. It is also known as midgut artery. And the derivative of the midgut is small intestine from the level of the opening of the bile duct, that is duodenum, second part of duodenum distal to the opening of the bile duct, yes, and that of the what is known as the jejunum, ileum, okay, And in the large intestine, it give rise to cecum, appendix, ascending colon, and right 2/3 part of transverse colon. Right 2/3 part of transverse colon. So what are the derivative of midgut? What are the derivative of midgut? Please unmute the mic.
Small intestine, beginning from the second part of the duodenum.
Yes, and what are
large intestine, in large intestine, cecum, appendix, ascending colon, and right 2/3 part of the transverse colon.
Jejunum and ileum is also the derivative of midgut. Jejunum and ileum. Okay, jejunum and ileum. That means I have mentioned here as the part of the small intestine distal to the opening of the bile duct. Confident? What is the artery of the midgut? Which artery supplies the derivative of midgut?
Superior mesenteric.
Yes, good. Now the distal part of the gut tube is known as hindgut. All the hindgut derivative are supplied by inferior mesenteric artery. It is the artery of hindgut. The ciliate trunk, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery, all are the branches of abdominal aorta. Abdominal aorta. So the hindgut give rise to the majority of the part of the GIT, as well as it also give rise to the some part of urinary system. What part of the GIT they are derived? That is up to the right 2/3 part of transverse colon is by midgut. Now remaining part of the transverse colon, that is left 1/3 part of the transverse colon, then the descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and superior part of anal canal are derived from hindgut. Then in the urinary system, it gives rise to the epithelium of the urinary bladder and most of the part of urethra. So these are the derivative of the hindgut. Okay. Now, can you tell me what is the artery of the hindgut? Are you there, my dear student? What is the artery of the hindgut? Inferior mesenteric artery. Yes. What are the derivative of the hindgut? If you have to enumerate, list the derivative of hindgut.
Most parts of GIT, like left 1/3 of transverse colon,
Yes.
descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and superior part of anal canal.
They all are the part of small intestine or large intestine?
Large intestine.
Very good. Then
in the urinary system, it gives derivatives to epithelium of urinary bladder and most parts of urethra.
So can you write down, if we ask the question, most of the time in the Viva as well as in SAQ, enumerate the derivative of gut tube. Enumerate the derivative means these three derivative of foregut. You have to enlist the derivative. Similarly, enlisting the derivative of midgut and hindgut. Can you do it, all of you? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, we have finished up to the development of the tongue in the previous class. Now, the development of esophagus. In this picture, this is the foregut. What is this? This is the foregut. The cranial most part of the foregut, here you can see this give rise to the pharynx. Distal to the pharynx, the part of the foregut. Okay, distal to the pharynx or caudal to the pharynx, this part of the foregut give rise to the esophagus. And this esophagus, initially, there is a common opening between esophagus and this respiratory diverticulum. This is the respiratory diverticulum emerging from the ventral wall of foregut. We taught you this in the development of respiratory system in second semester. So here, so initially what happens, this developing esophagus coming from the caudal part of the pharynx from the foregut is have a common opening with the respiratory diverticulum. Later, this common opening, this common channel gets separated by the formation of tracheoesophageal septum. Tracheoesophageal septum. Okay, and initially the length of the esophagus is very small. And you have studied that the heart, initially the heart is relocated cranial to, it is located cranial to the buccopharyngeal membrane. during development. But during the folding of the embryo, head folding, it migrates and occupies its normal position in the thorax. Okay, so what happens when there is a migration, mainly growth and relocation of the heart and the lung, developing heart and the lung in the region of the thorax, there occur the elongation of the esophagus. There occur the elongation of the esophagus, and the length of the adult length of the esophagus takes place, formation takes place during 7th week of intrauterine life. Now after this, what happens? The epithelial lining of this esophagus undergo rapid proliferation and occlude the lumen of the esophagus, and later on there occur the recanalization during 8th week of intrauterine life. Okay, and there occur the formation of the esophagus. So in a summary, esophagus is derived from which part of the foregut? The part of the foregut caudal to the pharynx. Initially, esophagus is have a common channel with respiratory diverticulum, separated by what is the name of the septum? Tracheoesophageal septum. The length of the esophagus occupies its final length during 7th week of intrauterine life. Okay. Are you following? Here you can see, can you see this in the blue color? This is respiratory diverticulum, yellow color is the foregut, which posterior part give rise to the esophagus, and this fold are known as tracheoesophageal septum, which fuse with each other, tracheoesophageal fold, which fuse with each other to form the tracheoesophageal septum and separates the anteriorly the respiratory diverticulum with the posteriorly pharynx and esophagus. Are you confident here, all of you? Are you confident on the development of esophagus?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now the epithelial lining of the esophagus, epithelial lining as well as the gland, esophageal gland, are derived from the endoderm of the foregut, whereas the mesoderm, muscle layer, in the histology also we taught you already that the esophagus has, in the upper part of esophagus, cervical as well as part of thoracic part of esophagus consists of the striated muscles. And these striated muscles are derived from the mesoderm of the pharyngeal arch, mesoderm. Okay, whereas the part of the esophagus which lies in abdomen has the smooth muscles in the lower third, and they are derived from the splanchnopleuric layer of lateral plate mesoderm. Besides this splanchnopleuric layer of the lateral plate mesoderm also give rise to the connective tissue, blood vessels of the esophagus. So if we have to write down short notes on the development of the esophagus, it derives from the part of the foregut distal to the distal to the pharynx, and it is separated from the respiratory diverticulum by tracheoesophageal septum. It occupies its final length during 7th week. The reason for extending its final length is due to the relocation of developing heart and the lung in the thorax, migration and relocation of the developing heart and the lungs in the thoracic cavity. The epithelial lining and the glands, esophageal glands, are derived from the endoderm of the foregut, whereas the muscle layer, the striated muscle layer, are derived from pharyngeal arch, mesoderm, and the smooth muscle layer are derived from splanchnopleuric layer of lateral plate mesoderm. Besides this, the connective tissue of the esophagus, the blood vessels of the esophagus, all are derivative of the splanchnopleuric layer of lateral plate mesoderm. Confident? So if we ask you, give the source of development of esophagus, what will you say in Viva? Are you there, student?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What is the source of the development of esophagus? It is derived from which gut tube? Which part of the gut tube?
Foregut caudal to the primordial pharynx.
Very good. Now tell me, the epithelial lining of the esophagus and the glands of the esophagus are derived from?
Endoderm of foregut.
Very good. the muscle layer of the esophagus are derived from?
Smooth muscle in the upper part is derived from mesoderm of the caudal pharyngeal arches, and
Not smooth muscle, skeletal
striated
muscle.
muscle in the
Yes.
skeletal muscle,
Yes.
and
Yes.
smooth muscle in the lower part from sphygmopubic layer of lateral plate mesoderm.
Okay. And when does the recanalization of the lumen of esophagus takes place?
During the 8th week.
What is the name of the septum which separates the developing esophagus and pharynx with the developing trachea and the lung?
Tracheoesophageal septum.
Okay, all of you, shall I proceed forward? Are you confident with development of esophagus?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the congenital anomalies associated with the esophagus is esophageal atresia, and one of the most important anomaly that is also associated with the development of respiratory system that we have done in the development of respiratory system in the second semester, that is tracheoesophageal fistula. Here you can see in the picture, this is the normal condition, and these all are remaining are the abnormal condition where there is atresia of the esophagus followed by formation of the fistula between the distal part of the esophagus in this case and the trachea. Here there is a fistula formation with the cranial and distal part of the esophagus with the trachea. Here there is a blind pouch in the upper and lower end, no fistula formation. Here there is a fistula formation in the S septum. This is the commonest fistula. So what is the reason for the formation of the esophageal atresia and the formation of tracheoesophageal fistula are the commonest embryological basis are either the deviation of the tracheoesophageal septum towards the posterior side or incomplete separation of the esophagus. As I have told you earlier that there is a proliferation of the endodome of the esophagus during development which occlude the lumen, and later on what happens, this occlusion of the lumen, there occur the recanalization during the 8th week. So if there is failure of the recanalization followed by failure of the separation of the formation of tracheoesophageal septum, then there will be formation of esophageal atresia along with the tracheoesophageal fistula. So these are the commonest reason for the esophageal atresia. So what happens in this esophageal atresia? As we know, in the fetus, the developing fetus gets suspended in the amniotic cavity by the umbilical cord, and in the amniotic cavity there is amniotic fluid. The fetus swallow the amniotic fluid, and this amniotic fluid passes through esophagus into the distal part of the GIT, stomach, small intestine, where there is absorption of the amniotic fluid takes place. In addition to it, via the blood vessels, the absorption blood vessel, it also reaches to the placenta. So what happens, this amniotic fluid, because of the presence of the esophageal atresia, the amniotic fluid fail to absorb, fail to absorb by the intestine. When there is a failure of the absorption of the amniotic fluid, then there will be excessive accumulation of the amniotic fluid in the amniotic cavity. The condition is known as polyhydramnios. Now in this case, you can see there is esophageal atresia. What happens in this case of the neonate after the birth? What happens? There will be excessive drooling of the saliva. Excessive drooling of the saliva, and there will be the baby will have the vomiting. As soon as there is a drinking of the milk, there will be regurgitation and the vomiting of the milk. So these are the commonest symptoms in the esophageal atresia. And what happens, how do we diagnose? In the X-ray also, when we pass the nasogastric tube to see the X-ray, contrast radiography of the GIT, then we will see that there is a atresia, blind pouch of the esophagus with the blind pouch of the esophagus. And sometimes what happens, if there is formation of the fistula, the content, when there is a regurgitation of the gastric content, it will also enter into the respiratory tree. So these are the commonest symptoms that appears in the esophageal atresia with tracheoesophageal fistula. So here I have mentioned it, unable to swallow the amniotic fluid. The fluid, because and as it is the fetus is unable to swallow, what will happen? The fluid cannot be absorbed, If there is fluid cannot be absorbed properly, there will be excessive amount of amniotic fluid in the amniotic cavity, which is known as polyhydramnios. If that baby get born, then the newborn infant with the esophageal atresia, there will what will happen? Excessive drooling of the saliva with the regurgitation, coughing, and vomiting. And when we esophagus, because of the presence of this esophageal blind pouch, this is how it will be appear in the esophageal atresia. Are you confident with the esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the embryological basis for the esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula? Are you there, student? Please answer, okay?
Posterior shifting of tracheoesophageal septum.
Very good. One is, this is septum. If there is failure of formation of septum or shifting of the septum or deviation of the septum, failure of fusion of the septum, then tracheoesophageal fistula. And regarding esophageal atresia, what happened during development of esophagus? During
Failure recanalization.
Very good. Failure of recanalization of the esophagus. So these are the two important embryological bases for the atresia, followed by tracheoesophageal fistula. Now esophageal stenosis is also the same embryological region. Here you can see there are several points. There is a esophageal stenosis, which is shown by the arrow here. So the embryological basis for esophageal stenosis is only one, that is the incomplete recanalization of the esophagus. And in some of the cases, even though there is a complete recanalization, if the blood vessels that supply this area of the esophagus fail to develop, then that area also there will be narrowing of the lumen of the esophagus, known as the esophageal stenosis. Confident? Esophageal stenosis. What is esophageal stenosis?
Narrowing of the lumen of esophagus.
Very good. What is the embryological basis for esophageal stenosis?
Incomplete recanalization of esophagus.
Yes. And even though there is complete recanalization and there is a formation of the lumen in 8th week, what is another reason for the narrowing of the lumen, yielding into esophageal stenosis?
Blood vessel.
Yes, failure to formation of the blood vessels in the affected area. Confident?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now short esophagus, as I have earlier mentioned that the initially the esophagus is of a small length, and what happens, it will occupy its, or it will form its final length during 7th week of intrauterine life. What is the reason for the formation of the elongation of the esophagus is by the migration and the relocation of the developing heart and the developing lung. Okay, so if there is failure of the migration of developing heart or developing lung in the thoracic region, what happens? Or if there is development failure of the formation of proper diaphragm, there will be formation of the gap in the muscular part of the diaphragm, and that is known as hiatal hernia. So if both the cases takes place together, then what happens? There will be short esophagus. And in the case of the short esophagus, what happens? The part of the small intestine, the part of the stomach, and even including sometimes in the severe case, the part of the duodenum also get enter into the thorax through the congenital hiatal hernia. Congenital hiatal hernia mainly takes place in the developing diaphragm. So what is another congenital anomaly associated with the development of esophagus is short esophagus. Short esophagus is mainly associated with congenital hiatal hernia. Now, development of stomach. Can you see this? This is the distal part of the foregut. This distal part of the foregut gives rise to the stomach. Initially, this distal part of the foregut is tubular in shape. Later on, during end of the 4th week of intrauterine life, it occupies the fusiform sepate. Okay, and fusiform sepate or fusiform dilatation having ventral border. This is the ventral aspect of the embryo. This is the dorsal aspect of the embryo. This is the cranial aspect of the embryo. This is the caudal aspect. So it consists of this fusiform dilatation of the stomach. Developing stomach comprises of ventral border. In the embryo, we don't say anterior border, we say ventral border. This is the posterior border. On the left side, left surface. On the right side, right surface. Okay. So initially it is a tubular shape. Later occupies fusiform shape. The fusiform sepate stomach has ventral border. This is the dorsal border, and left surface and right surface. In this picture, you can easily see this is the what is known as the left surface, and on the other side is the right surface. This is the ventral border of the fusiform dilatation. This is the dorsal border of the fusiform dilatation. This is the fusiform dilatation. Are you confident? So the stomach is derived from which part of foregut?
Distal.
Distal, caudal part of the foregut. Initially, the shape of the caudal part of foregut is what shape?
Tubular.
Tubular. And tubular change into which shape is this? Fusiform shape. And what are the part of fusiform dilatation? Which part is this? Can you see the pointer? Ventral border. This is which border?
Dorsal.
Dorsal border. This is which side or surface? Sorry.
Left surface.
Facing towards the left side, left surface. Facing towards the right side, right surface. Confident? Are you confident, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now you see in the picture here, this dorsal border grows faster than the ventral border. So as it goes faster, it elongates and forms which curvature of the stomach? Greater curvature. And the ventral border, which grows less, will persist as it is as a which curvature of the stomach? Lesser curvature. Confident? Dorsal border grows faster than the ventral border, and dorsal border gives rise to which curvature of the stomach?
Greater curvature.
And ventral border gives rise to which curvature of the stomach?
Lesser curvature.
Lesser curvature. Now what happens? This fusiform dilatation of the stomach, this fusiform dilatation initially occupied the midline position, median position. You know the meaning meaning of the median and medial, yes? Median means lying on the midline. So this fusiform dilatation initially lies in the median position. Okay? Initially lies in the median position and undergo the rotation. You can see here axis. This is the longitudinal axis. It undergo rotation in the longitudinal axis in a clockwise direction. You can see with the arrow longitudinal axis in a clockwise direction. So when it rotates in the longitudinal axis in a clockwise direction, can somebody tell me the ventral border will face towards which side? Moves towards which side?
Right.
Is it right side? If it rotates, this fusiform dilatation, if it rotates in the longitudinal axis, in the 90-degree rotation in longitudinal axis, clockwise direction, then the ventral border will go to which side?
Right.
Right side.
Posterior side.
Ventral border will go to the right side. And dorsal border will go to which side?
Left
and posterior. Yes, left side. Very good. Then tell me, my dear student, then this left surface will face anteriorly or posteriorly?
Posterior.
Anterior.
Left surface.
Anterior.
Anterior.
And right surface?
Posteriorly.
Right surface posteriorly. Good. Did you understood now? Now initially this fusiform dilatation lies in the midline. They undergo rotation. In which axis initially? First it goes rotation on the longitudinal axis in the clockwise direction. Okay. Then what happens when it goes in the longitudinal axis in the clockwise direction about 90 degree in the longitudinal axis? This is which border? Ventral border. Ventral border will face towards the which side? Ventral border, you as you said, all of you said right, towards the right side, dorsal border towards the left side, left surface will face towards the anterior or ventral. In development we say ventral, we do not say anterior, okay? In the adult only we say anterior. In the development embryologically we say ventral instead of anterior. So the original left side or the left surface will become anterior surface, and the original posterior right surface will become the dorsal surface. So as you can see, the right surface will become the posterior surface and the left surface will become the anterior surface. So along the right surface run the right vagus nerve, along the left surface run the left vagus nerve. So obviously the right vagus nerve supplies which surface of the stomach?
Posterior.
Posterior. And the left vagus supplies the which surface of the stomach?
Anterior.
Anterior. Okay. Now we will make a small summary. First, the stomach is derived from caudal part of foregut. Then what happens? What happens in this caudal part of foregut? It is
Fusiform.
Dilated.
yes, dilated to form fusiform sepate. Then this fusiform sepate has what part?
Asymmetrical development of
Yes.
two borders, ventral and
Yes,
dorsal.
asymmetrical development. So the ventral border will form which curvature?
Greater.
Lesser.
Lesser.
And so dorsal border will form
Greater.
greater curvature, and it has right surface and left surface. And now what happens? The stomach undergo the rotation in the longitudinal axis, 90-degree rotation in a clockwise direction. As it undergo 90-degree rotation in the clockwise direction, what happens to the fusiform dilatation? The lesser curvature which is formed by ventral border face towards which side?
Anteriorly.
It
Right
was facing
and anterior.
anteriorly before rotation. After rotation it faced towards
Right.
right. And the dorsal border faced towards
Left side.
left. And the left surface will face toward
Anterior.
anteriorly, and right surface will face toward
Posterior.
posteriorly. So as the left surface face towards anteriorly and the right surface face towards posteriorly, so the right vagus nerve supplies the posterior surface of stomach and the left vagus nerve supplies the anterior surface of stomach or anterior wall of stomach. Are you confident? Now after the longitudinal rotation, this is how it appears, developing stomach. Then it undergo rotation in the anterior-posterior axis. When it undergo rotation in the anterior-posterior axis, what will happen? Guess.
Shortening of the span.
No. What will happen to this? This is the pyloric end of the stomach. Yes. This is the cardiac end of the stomach. So if this developing stomach undergo the rotation in AP axis, what will happen?
Pyloric end goes upwards.
Yes, upward towards the which side? Upward and right. Very good. And the cardiac end will go towards downward towards the which side?
Left side.
Left side. This is how the adult position of the stomach formation takes place. Are you confident now? Rotation of the stomach?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So the rotation in the anterior posterior axis, what are the effect? The cranial region, which is cardiac region or the fundus of the stomach. Here this part is known as fundus. okay, and move towards the left and slightly inferiorly, whereas the caudal region, this is the pyloric end of the stomach, will move upward towards the right. Confident? This is how the adult position of the J-shaped adult position of the stomach formation takes place. Now, tell me, student, the epithelial lining and the gland of the stomach are derived from which germ layer?
Endoderm.
Endoderm of
Endoderm.
foregut. Whereas the muscle, lamina propria, submucosa, muscula externa, serosa, blood vessels, all are derived from
Mesoderm.
mesoderm. Which mesoderm? Splachnopluric layer of lateral plate mesoderm. Confident? Are you confident with the development of stomach?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the mesenteries of the stomach. You can see in this picture, the stomach is suspended into the peritoneal cavity by the fold. Okay, anterior fold is known as the ventral mesogastrium and posterior fold is known as the dorsal mesogastrium. These dorsal mesogastriums hold the developing stomach with the dorsal body wall. Okay, and initially it lies in the median plane. You can see in the picture, initially it lies in the median plane. As soon as there is a formation of the lesser sac by the coalescing of the cleft formed in the dorsal mesogastrium, and during the rotation of the stomach in the longitudinal axis, in the 90-degree rotation in the longitudinal axis in clockwise direction, what happens? There is an elongation of the dorsal mesogastrium, and in the dorsal mesogastrium there occur the development of the spleen, and thus the part of the dorsal mesogastrium is divided into the part of the dorsal mesogastrium between the stomach and developing spleen is known as the gastrosplenic ligament. The part of the dorsal mesogastrium between the spleen and developing kidney takes place in the posterior wall of abdomen here, is known as the lienorenal ligament. And due to the elongation of the dorsal mesogastrium by the rotation of the stomach, what happened? This elongation of dorsal mesogastrium will forms the fold of the peritoneum which suspends downward in the peritoneal cavity known as greater omentum. So what are the derivative of the dorsal mesogastrium? The derivative of the dorsal mesogastrium are greater omentum, gastrosplenic, lienorenal, and between the stomach and the developing diaphragm there is also part that is known as the gastrophrenic. So these are the derivative of the dorsal mesogastrium. Similarly, there is a fold of the peritoneum, fold of the mesentery which is suspending the developing stomach anteriorly with the anterior wall of abdomen. This is known as ventral mesogastrium. Then what happens during development? From the part of the midgut, junction of the midgut and foregut, there occur the formation of the hepatic bud. This hepatic bud invade the this ventral mesogastrium and divides this ventral mesogastrium into two parts. The part of the ventral mesogastrium between the liver and the stomach is known as lesser omentum, and the part of the ventral mesogastrium between the developing liver and the what is known as the diaphragm is known as falciform ligament. So the derivative of the ventral mesogastrium are falciform ligament and lesser omentum. The derivative of dorsal mesogastrium are the most important one, the elongated one is known as greater omentum. Then other are gastrosplenic, lienorenal, and gastrophrenic. Confident? Are you confident with the mesenteries of the stomach? What are the mesenteries of the stomach?
Dorsal and ventral.
What are the derivative of the dorsal mesogastrium? Which omentum? Greater omentum. Which omentum is derived from ventral mesogastrium?
Lesser omentum.
Besides lesser omentum, what is the derivative of ventral mesogastrium?
Falciform ligament.
Omental bursa.
Omental bursa is in the dorsal mesogastrium, dear. Okay. Here you can see, this is the omental bursa in the dorsal mesogastrium, not in the ventral. Omental bursa means lesser sac. Another name is lesser sac. So what is the other derivative? Falciform ligament from the ventral mesogastrium. Now bursa. Here you can see this is the dorsal mesogastrium, this is the developing stomach, this is the cross-sectional diagram. Now what happens in the dorsal mesogastrium? You can see there occur the formation of the numerous cleft, intercellular cleft. This intercellular isolated cleft which develop in the dorsal mesogastrium, which soon collapse or fuse with each other and give rise to a cavity behind the stomach, developing stomach, known as the omental bursa. And this omental bursa increases, expanded its size when there occur the rotation of the stomach and elongation of dorsal mesogastrium. Rotation of the stomach and elongation of dorsal mesogastrium. And this omental bursa communicate with the greater sac or the peritoneal cavity through this foramen. The foramen is known as omental foramina or foramina of Winslow or epiploic foramen. So in the summary, what is the source of development of the omental bursa? It is derived from the fusion of the cleft that appear in the dorsal mesogastrium. Its size expanded during rotation of the stomach and elongation of dorsal mesogastrium. It communicates with the greater sac through the epiploic foramen. Are you confident with the 3 points of the development of omental bursa, all of you? Shall I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The congenital anomaly associated with the development of the stomach. One of the most important one is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Here you can see with the arrow, there is a marked muscular thickening of the pylorus. That is thickening of the pyloric sphincter. Because of the thickening of the pyloric sphincter, there is a severe stenosis of the pyloric canal. And what will happen if there is severe stenosis of pyloric canal? The acidic chyme present in the stomach will not enter into the duodenum. So there will be expansion of the stomach. And when there is expansion of the stomach, there is a high chance of the regurgitation of the content of the stomach through the esophagus and oral cavity, yielding into the projectile vomiting in the case of the neonate after birth. So what is the way of relief is, there is only one way, that is known as surgical relief, is the only one method for the relief from the congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, which is known as pyloromyotomy. And now the development of the duodenum. Now here you can see this is the foregut, distal part of the foregut. This is the part of the foregut and this is the part of the midgut. So the duodenum is derived from the terminal part of the foregut and the cranial part of the midgut. Initially the duodenum forms the C-shaped loop. Can you see this? C-shaped, letter C. C-shaped loop which lie on the midline. As the stomach rotates, what happens? Initially this C-shaped loop of the developing duodenum, which is derived from the foregut and midgut, is suspended into the peritoneal cavity by the fold made from the mesoderm anteriorly and posteriorly. Anteriorly is known as ventral mesoduodenum, posteriorly is known as dorsal mesoduodenum. And what happens? In the ventral mesoduodenum, there lies the ventral pancreatic bud, which is derived from this hepatic bud. You can see in the picture. And in the dorsal mesoduodenum lies the dorsal pancreatic bud, which is also derived from this foregut. You can see. So, one reason, rotation of the stomach. Number one, rotation of the stomach. When there is rotation of the stomach, what happens? This dorsal and ventral pancreatic buds fuses with each other. When there is fusion of dorsal and ventral pancreatic bud, what happens? The dorsal mesoduodenum, which is suspending this duodenal loop, C-shaped duodenal loop from the posterior wall of abdomen, get adhere with the posterior wall of abdomen. And this C-shaped loop now face towards the right side. In such a manner, this duodenum become retroperitoneal, and as it becomes retroperitoneal, the dorsal mesoduodenum after the fusion with the posterior wall of abdomen disappears. At the same time, the ventral mesoduodenum also disappears, yielding into the formation of the retroperitoneal outline of this duodenum. Okay, so the duodenum is derived from the distal part of foregut and cranial part of midgut. Initially, it is C-shaped. Initially, it is suspended from ventral body wall by ventral mesoduodenum, dorsal body wall by dorsal mesoduodenum. Then what happens? This C-shaped body wall, what happens? When there is fusion of the ventral pancreatic board with the dorsal pancreatic board during the rotation of the stomach, this will causes the dorsal mesoduodenum to fuse with the posterior wall of abdomen and the disappearance of the ventral mesoduodenum, and thus the duodenum get fixed in the retroperitoneal position, and it becomes the which organ? Retroperitoneal organ. Divide of peritoneal fold. Divide of peritoneal fold. Okay. This is how this loop, C-shaped loop of the duodenum come to lie towards the right side. So in our body, the duodenum, C-shaped loop of the duodenum lies on the right side. And in which position? Retroperitoneal position, in the posterior wall of abdomen. Are you confident with the development of the duodenum? Similarly, in almost all part of the GIT, what happens? The lumen. In the lumen, the endodermal lining of this developing duodenum get proliferate rapidly and occlude the lumen. And the recanalization of this lumen takes place in second month of intrauterine life. And as this duodenum is derived from the distal part of foregut and cranial part of midgut, so they have the arterial supply from the branch of the celiac trunk as well as from the branch of the superior mesenteric artery. Now, the epithelial lining and the gland of the duodenum is derived from the endoderm of the caudal part of foregut and midgut, whereas the muscle, blood vessel, connective tissue of the lamina propria, submucosa, musculus externa, all are derived from the splachnopleuric layer of lateral plate mesoderm. Are you confident how the duodenum, which was intraperitoneal during development, became retroperitoneal? What is the reason for the formation of the retroperitoneal position of the duodenum? Can anybody say this?
Rotation
Of
towards
the
the right
gut
side.
tube and the fusion of, you can see in the picture, fusion of pancreatic boards. Okay. And what is the source of development of duodenum? What are these?
Distal.
Terminal part of.
Caudal
Distal
part
part
of
of
foregut
foregut. Very good.
and cranial part of midgut.
Very good. Very good. And remember, the muscle, vessel, all are derivative of which mesoderm?
Splachnopleuric.
Yes. And epithelial lining and glands from?
Endoderm.
Endoderm. Remember this.
Endoderm.
Endoderm. When does the recanalization of the duodenum takes place?
Second month.
Yeah, second month of intrauterine life. Now what is this? This is the duodenal stenosis. This is the partial occlusion of the duodenal lumen. And what is the embryological basis? As I told earlier, initially there is occlusion, then there is a recanalization. So if there is failure of recanalization, then there is a narrowing of the lumen of the duodenum known as the duodenal stenosis. Mostly it takes place in the horizontal part of the duodenum. This is the horizontal part of the duodenum, or the fourth part of the duodenum. Okay. And if there is duodenal stenosis, as duodenal also receives the hepatopancreatic ampulla, means union of the common bile duct with the pancreatic duct. So there will be vomiting. The vomiting will consist of the bile. Okay. So this is known as bilious emitting. So in the stenosis of the duodenum, the stomach content, usually containing bile, are often vomited by the infant after birth. Okay. Then another one is duodenal atresia. If there is complete occlusion, failure of the recanalization, not partial, failure of complete recanalization of the duodenum, then that will lead into duodenal atresia. Okay, so in the duodenal atresia also, the neonate with the duodenal atresia also will have the vomit. What type of vomit? It will consist, the vomit mainly consists of the bile. Okay. Then another one is duodenal atresia. This is there, and in the case of the duodenal atresia, here you can see this is the epigastric region. In the upper epigastric region, there will be massive swelling in the upper epigastric region. Okay, and in the radiograph, contrast radiography, there will be seen the double bubble sign is seen. As you know already, the fundus of the stomach already consists of the gas. So this is the gastric bubble with the gas in the fundus of the stomach, and there will be formation of the gas in the duodenum because of the duodenal atresia. and this sign is known as double bubble sign, which is seen in the ultrasound or the contrast radiography in the case of the duodenal atresia. And in the case of the duodenal atresia, there will be polyhydramnios because the fetus is unable to swallow the amniotic fluid because of the atresia, and there is unable of the absorption of the amniotic fluid by the small intestine of the fetus. So there will be excessive accumulation of the amniotic fluid in the amniotic cavity known as the polyhydramnios. Now the midgut. Okay, now this is foregut. This is distal part of foregut. This is the C-shaped loop duodenum, and this is the midgut. The midgut is the middle part of the gut tube. It is suspended from the posterior abdominal wall by the mesentery known as dorsal mesentery. Because of the rapid elongation, it forms a loop which is U-shaped, ventrally U-shaped loop. This U-shaped loop is known as midgut loop or primary intestinal loop. This midgut loop has consists of the axis formed by the artery. The axis is which artery? Superior mesenteric artery. And this U-shaped midgut loop is connected with the yolk sac by this duct. What is the name of this duct? Vitelline duct. Later on, this vitelline duct regresses, and this vitelline duct passes through the umbilicus and umbilical cord and has a connection with the yolk sac. So what is the midgut? Midgut is the middle part of the gut tube. Midgut, after the elongation, forms the loop known as the midgut loop. It is U-shaped. It is also known as primary intestinal loop. It has an axis formed by the superior mesenteric artery. Okay, and this midgut loop has two limbs. Can you see this, my dear student? Arrow, all of you. This arrow.
Yes, ma'am.
This is known as cephalic. Cephalic means towards above. Cephalic limb. We don't say superior here. We say cephalic in the development. Cephalic limb, and this is the caudal limb. So the midgut loop has how many limbs, my dear student? How many limbs? Which limb is this?
2 limbs.
Yes. What is this?
Cephalic.
And which limb is this?
Caudal.
Caudal. Okay. And what is the shape of the midgut loop?
U-shape.
U-shape. Okay. And what is the name of the duct which connect the midgut loop with the yolk sac? Remnant of the yolk sac?
Vitelline duct.
Vitelline. Confident? What is the name of the artery which forms the axis of this loop?
Superior mesenteric.
Yes, very good. Yes. Now this cephalic limb, I have made a summary for the Viva point of view. This cephalic limb will give rise to, see, the duodenum, first part of duodenum and second part of duodenum up to the opening of the bile duct is by foregut. Then the part of the duodenum distal to the opening of the bile duct is by midgut. So from this midgut loop, the duodenum distal to the opening of the bile duct, then jejunum, then ileum. So this cephalic limb will give rise to the distal part of the duodenum, jejunum, ileum, and this caudal limb of the midgut give rise to remaining part of large intestine, that is cecum, appendix, ascending colon, and right 2/3 part of transverse colon. Confident?
Yes, ma'am.
Very interesting. Have you ever imagined how your small intestine has developed? See, midgut loop. This is how it was developed in your body when you were inside your mommy. So which limb give rise to the appendix or the cecum?
Caudal.
Very good. Ascending colon? Right 2/3 part of transverse colon?
Caudal.
Cephalic limb.
No. Caudal. Cephalic limb. What are the derivative of cephalic limb?
Duodenum distal to bile duct.
And jejunum and
Jejunum.
yes, very good, very good. Now this is the last slide for today. Now what happens, because of the big liver is the size of the liver is very big and the abdominal size is very small. So the midgut loop, the developing midgut loop undergo rapid elongation and it do not occupy the abdomen. So it protrudes through this umbilicus and umbilical cord into the extraembryonic cavity. So this herniation is known as physiological herniation and this takes place in 6th week of intrauterine life. And it returns back through this umbilicus into the abdomen during 10th week of intrauterine life. What is the reason for the returning? The reason for returning is reduction in the growth of the liver along with the expansion of the abdominal cavity, regression of the mesonephros, developing mesonephros. What is the reason for the herniation? The reason for herniation is in excessive large size of the liver and a small size of the abdominal cavity causes the physiological herniation. So what is the physiological herniation? Protrusion of the loop of the developing midgut loop into the extraembryonic cavity known as chorionic cavity is known as physiological herniation. When does it take place? 6th week. When does it return back? 10th week. Confident? Physiological herniation. When does it take place, my dear student? Tell me, please.
6th.
And when does it return back to the abdominal cavity?
10th.
Where does this loop of intestine protrude? In which cavity? Amniotic cavity or chorionic cavity?
Chorionic cavity.
Chorionic cavity. Another name of chorionic cavity is extraembryonic cavity. Okay, now I will download the attendance. If you have any queries, please ask the queries in the separate chat. I will now download the attendance. Okay, it is downloaded. If you have any queries, ask me, okay? Till today, we have finished the physiological herniation. In next class, we'll complete the development of gastrointestinal system and I'll give you some PBQ, SAQ and MCQ to solve it. Okay? Please reply, my dear student. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.